The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy and destiny. But what happens when something from beyond the stars arrives, something forged not by the Force, but by the blood of gods and the ashes of Olympus? What happens when a killer of deities crashes into a galaxy ruled by Sith, lords who believe themselves untouchable? The twin suns of Tatooine blazed overhead as they had for millennia, baking the endless dunes into waves of shimmering heat. The desert world turned beneath them, indifferent to the struggles of the galaxy, indifferent to the Empire's iron grip, indifferent to the scattered whispers of rebellion, indifferent to the Hutts who ruled its criminal underworld. Tatooine cared for nothing but survival, and survival on Tatooine meant strength. The rift opened without warning. No hyperspace signature. No ship on any scanner from Mos Eisley to Mos Espa. Just a tear in reality itself. A wound in space that screamed with energies older than the Republic, darker than the Sith, and infinitely more primal. For 3 seconds, the sky above the dune sea split, open with light that was not light, crimson and gold and ash gray, colors that had no name in this galaxy. Then something fell. It fell like a meteor, trailing fire and fury, crashing into the sand with enough force to create a crater 50 meters wide. The impact sent a shockwave rippling across the desert, toppling moisture vaporators and sending banthas stampeding in terror. Sand fused into glass at the crater's edge. The air itself seemed to recoil. For several minutes, nothing moved. Then, from the center of the crater, a hand emerged, scarred, pale as death. Fingers curled into the scorching sand and pulled. The figure that rose from the impact site was a man, but only in the loosest sense. He stood nearly 7 feet tall, his body a tapestry of scars that told stories of battles no living being in this galaxy could comprehend. Ash-white skin marked him as something other, and the red tattoo, spiraling across half his torso and face, spoke of violence made identity. Kratos, the ghost of Sparta, the god of war, the killer of Olympus, opened his eyes and saw a world that was not his own. He knew immediately. The air tasted wrong. The light felt different against his skin. 2 suns where there should be one. Their radiation alien to his divine physiology. He could feel his strength, still present, but somehow muted, as if the universe itself was pressing down on him with invisible weight. Not the Force, he did not know that name yet, but something vast and omnipresent that his divine essence instinctively recoiled from. The blades of chaos materialized in his hands with a thought. The hellfire-wreathed chains wrapping around his forearms with familiar weight. The flames burned green and orange, responding to his rage, his confusion, his eternal curse. They functioned perfectly. Hell's fire, it seemed, transcended dimensional boundaries. He dismissed them and reached over his shoulder. The Leviathan axe came to his grip, frost already forming along its runic blade despite the desert heat. But he felt it immediately. The weapon's power was diminished, perhaps 10 or 15%. The Itram magic woven into its core by the Huldra brothers was struggling to adapt to this reality's laws of physics. It would adjust. Everything adjusted eventually, or it died. Kratos scanned the horizon. Endless sand in every direction, broken only by rocky outcroppings and the occasional moisture vaporator standing, like silent sentinels. In the distance, he could see what appeared to be a settlement, primitive structures, clustered together, shimmering in the heat distortion. He had been lost before, dragged from Greece to the Norse realms by fate and fury. This was merely another prison, another test. He would find answers. He would find a way forward. And if this world tried to chain him as the gods had, he would break it as he had broken them. The warrior began walking toward the settlement, each step leaving deep impressions in the sand. He did not know that his arrival had already been noticed. 3 miles to the north, a Tusken Raider war party had heard the impact and seen the unnatural light. They were already mounting their banthas, raising their Gatterfee sticks, preparing to investigate what the desert had delivered to them. 8 miles to the east, in the spaceport of Mos Eisley, an Imperial Inquisitor named Seventh Sister paused in her interrogation of a suspected rebel sympathizer. She had felt something. Not a disturbance in the Force exactly, but an absence, a void where something should be but wasn't. Like staring at a hole in reality that refused to be filled. Her hand went instinctively to her spinning lightsaber hilt, yellow eyes narrowing. "Send a patrol to the Dunes Sea," she commanded her stormtrooper escort. "Something just arrived on this miserable rock. Something I need to see." And far above Tatooine, in the bridge of a star destroyer passing through the system on routine patrol, a junior officer noticed an energy spike on the sensors that had appeared and vanished in seconds. He logged it, marked it for investigation, and returned to his duties. The report would eventually reach someone who cared. But in the desert, Kratos walked on, unaware and unconcerned. He had fought Olympians and survived Ragnarok. Whatever this galaxy had to offer, he had faced worse. He was wrong, but he would not learn that for several more hours. The ghost of Sparta had arrived in the Empire era, and the galaxy would never forget the man who made gods bleed. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. Behind him, the crater continued to smolder, glass shards glinting like broken stars in the sand. The twin suns climbed higher, indifferent as always. Tatooine had seen many things fall from the sky. Most of them died within days. Kratos would not be most things. The Tusken Raiders found him before he reached the settlement. Kratos heard them coming, the rhythmic grunting of banthas, the whisper of sand beneath clawed feet, the subtle shift in air pressure that spoke of encirclement. 23 warriors, he estimated from the sounds alone. They thought themselves hunters. They thought him prey. They were about to learn differently. The war party crested the dune ahead of him, silhouettes against the burning sky. Their Gatterfee sticks rose in challenge, sunlight glinting off the metal spikes and axe blades. The lead Tusken, larger than the others, his wrappings decorated with the teeth and bones of previous kills, raised his weapon and bellowed a challenge through his breathing apparatus. The sound was harsh, alien, but Kratos understood its meaning in every language. Stop or die. Kratos stopped, not from fear, but from calculation. He observed them with the tactical mind of a Spartan general who had commanded armies against the forces of Olympus. Their weapons were primitive but effective. Their movements suggested coordination, pack tactics. They had chosen their ground well. High dunes on three sides, sun at their backs to blind their target. Against a mortal man, it would have been a perfect ambush. "I do not want this fight," Kratos said, his voice like grinding stone. The words were Greek, meaningless to them, but his tone carried universal clarity. "Stand aside." The lead Tusken responded by charging down the dune, weapon raised, ululating war cry tearing from his throat. The others followed in a cascade of sand and fury. The blades of chaos erupted into Kratos' hands. The first Tusken died before his feet touched level ground, both blades punching through his chest in a spray of blood that hissed as it hit the hellfire chains. Kratos pulled, and the body flew backward into 3 more raiders, bowling them over. He spun, chains extending to their full length, and the blades became a whirlwind of green fire and sharpened metal. 2 more Tuskens fell, throats opened, before they could even swing their weapons. A Gatterfee stick crashed toward his skull from behind. Kratos caught it one-handed without looking, his enhanced reflexes functioning despite the dimensional adjustment. He yanked the weapon, and the Tusken holding it, forward, then drove his fist through the raider's chest with enough force to shatter the sternum and pulverize the heart. The body dropped, and Kratos threw the Gatterfee stick like a spear, impaling another charging warrior through the stomach. The Tuskens hesitated. 5 of their number lay dead or dying in the space of 10 seconds. This was not normal. This was not possible. They attacked anyway. Tuskens did not retreat. Kratos met them in the sand, and the dunes became an abattoir. The Leviathan axe materialized in his right hand, blades dismissed, and he swung it in a horizontal arc that bisected 3 raiders at the waist. Frost spread from the wounds instantly, freezing blood mid-spray. He recalled the axe as a Gatterfee stick scraped across his shoulder. First, blood drawn, but the wound was shallow, already beginning to close. His regeneration was slower here, but it still functioned. He caught the offending Tusken by the throat, lifted him off the ground, and threw him with such force that the body crashed through 2 others like a cannonball. Bones shattered. Sand erupted. Kratos advanced, methodical and merciless, the muscle memory of 10,000 battles guiding every movement. A Tuscan cycler rifle barked, primitive slug thrower, black powder weapon. The bullet caught Kratos in the ribs, penetrating perhaps an inch before his dense musculature stopped it. He felt the impact, felt the burn, but it was nothing compared to Olympian steel through his chest, nothing compared to the blade of Olympus impaling him. He turned toward the shooter, and the Tuscan saw his face, saw the absolute absence of fear, the cold certainty of death looking back. The raider tried to reload. The Leviathan axe took his head before the next round cleared the chamber. 15 seconds later, silence returned to the dune sea. 23 Tuscan raiders lay scattered across the sand, bodies cooling rapidly under the twin suns. Kratos stood among them, breathing steadily, barely winded. His ash-white skin was spattered with blood that was not his own. The bullet wound in his ribs had already stopped bleeding. He knelt beside one of the bodies and examined it. The wrappings, the primitive armor, the weapon design, all spoke of a culture adapted to harsh conditions, shaped by scarcity and violence. Not unlike Sparta, in its own way. He felt no satisfaction in their deaths, no rage, no grief. They had chosen violence. He had answered in the only language that mattered. A banda wandered close, sniffing at its fallen rider. Kratos studied the creature, six-legged, shaggy, docile despite the carnage. He approached slowly, hand extended. The banda snorted but did not flee. Animals, he had learned long ago, could sense what manner of thing he was. Some fled. Some, like this one, recognized an apex predator and chose submission. He took the reins and began searching the bodies for supplies. Water containers, precious in this desert. Dried meat of some kind. A crude map scratched on leather, showing settlements and territories. The symbols meant nothing to him yet, but he could read terrain. One settlement was marked larger than others, surrounded by smaller marks that might indicate danger or importance. Mos Eisley. He would learn the name soon enough. Kratos mounted the banda with surprising ease for someone who had never seen such a creature before. Adaptation was survival, and he had survived everything the cosmos had thrown at him. This beast was merely transportation. As he rode toward the distant settlement, he did not see the small spherical droid hovering behind a distant rock formation. The probe droid's optical sensors tracked his movement, recording every detail, transmitting encrypted data to the Imperial garrison in Mos Eisley. The seventh sister received the transmission and watched the footage 3 times, her expression shifting from curiosity to hunger. "Magnificent," she whispered, watching Kratos tear through the Tuscan war party like a force of nature. Not force-sensitive, but powerful. Very powerful. She leaned forward, studying the way he moved, the weapons that appeared and disappeared, the strength that exceeded any normal being. Lord Vader will want to know about this. She stood, smoothing her dark robes. "Prepare a capture team. Full stormtrooper squad, heavy weapons. I want him alive if possible." A thin smile crossed her lips. "But dead is acceptable if he resists. Either way, the Emperor will want to study him." In the desert, Kratos continued his journey, unaware that he had just painted a target on his back the size of a Star Destroyer. The Empire had noticed the God-Killer, and the Empire always took what it wanted. Mos Eisley sprawled across the desert like a wound that refused to heal. A hive of smugglers, criminals, and beings who had learned that survival meant asking no questions and keeping blasters close. The spaceport's cantinas and trading posts buzzed with 100 different languages, the air thick with the smell of exotic spices, engine coolant, and desperation. Imperial stormtroopers patrolled the streets in pairs, their white armor a reminder that even this lawless hole existed at the Empire's pleasure. Kratos rode through the main gate on the stolen banda, and every conversation within 50 meters died. He dismounted in the central plaza, and the crowd parted around him like water around a stone. Not from courtesy, but from instinct, the same instinct that made lesser predators yield to greater ones. His appearance alone was enough. 7 feet of scarred muscle and controlled violence. Weapons that no one recognized strapped to his back and waist. Ash-white skin that spoke of something fundamentally wrong with the natural order. A Rodian merchant dropped his wares and fled. A Twi'lek smuggler put his hand on his blaster, then slowly removed it when Kratos' gaze swept past him. Even the stormtroopers hesitated, hands hovering near their E-11 rifles, but not raising them. Not yet. Kratos approached a cantina, the largest building visible, with sounds of music and voices spilling from its entrance. Water, information, shelter. In that order. He had credits from none of the bodies, so he would need to barter or take. Preferably the former. He was trying to leave that life behind. The universe, as always, had other plans. The cantina's interior was dimly lit, packed with beings of species Kratos had no names for. The band, a group of creatures, with bulbous heads, played some discordant melody on instruments that seemed to be half alive. The bartender, a pale humanoid with calculating eyes, tracked Kratos' approach with the expression of someone who had seen everything and been impressed by nothing. Until now. Water, Kratos said in Greek. The bartender stared blankly. Kratos gestured to a patron's drink, then to himself. The bartender nodded slowly, understanding the universal language of need and threat. 5 credits, the bartender said in basic, holding up 5 fingers to emphasize. Kratos had no credits. He reached for the only thing he had taken from the Tuscans, a bone charm decorated with intricate carvings. He placed it on the bar. The bartender examined it, recognition flickering in his eyes. Tuscan craftsmanship, rare in settlements. Worth more than water, but he wasn't about to negotiate with something that looked like it had crawled out of a Sith holocron. He poured a tall glass and slid it across the bar. Kratos drank deeply, the liquid lukewarm but wet. His body, still adjusting to this dimension's stellar radiation, needed more hydration than normal. He finished the glass and gestured for another. That's when the Inquisitor arrived. The cantina's entrance darkened as Seventh Sister stepped through, flanked by 8 stormtroopers in precise formation. Her yellow eyes scanned the room once, then locked onto Kratos with predatory focus. The music died. Conversations ceased. Everyone recognized Imperial authority when it wore dark robes and carried a lightsaber. "You," she said, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent cantina. "The one who massacred a Tuscan war party 3 hours ago. You will come with me for questioning." Kratos turned slowly, water glass still in his hand. He studied her, the confidence in her posture, the weapon at her belt, the soldiers arrayed behind her. He had seen this before. Priests of Zeus, servants of Odin, enforcers of divine law. Different galaxy, same arrogance. "No," he said simply. Seventh Sister's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in her eyes. She had expected fear, or at least compliance. She stepped forward, and Kratos felt it, a pressure against his mind. Subtle but insistent, like invisible fingers trying to pry open his thoughts. Not unlike the mental manipulation of Olympian magic, but different, colder, more invasive. The force pushed against his will, seeking purchase, seeking control. It found only granite. Kratos' mind had been forged in Sparta's crucible, tempered by the Fury's torment, sharpened by a decade of servitude to Ares. Gods had tried to break his will and failed. This woman, powerful as she might be in her own context, was not a god. The mental pressure slid off his consciousness like water off marble. Seventh Sister's eyes widened. Fractionally. Impossible. The mind trick worked on everyone. Weak-willed, strong-willed, it didn't matter. But this man didn't even seem to notice the attempt. "Take him," she commanded, stepping back. The stormtroopers raised their rifles. 8 red dots appeared on Kratos' chest and head, targeting, lasers painting him for execution. "Last chance," she said. "Surrender or die." Kratos set down his water glass with deliberate care. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of countless battlefields and the graves of pantheons. "I have killed beings you would call gods. You are not even close." The stormtroopers opened fire. Blaster bolts screamed across the cantina in a storm of superheated plasma. Patrons dove for cover, tables overturned, glasses shattered. The air filled with red light and the ozone stink of energy weapons. Kratos moved. His speed shocked them, not force-enhanced, not augmented by technology, just the raw velocity of a being whose body exceeded mortal limits even in a diminished state. He crossed the 10-meter distance to the nearest stormtrooper in less than a second, grabbed the man's rifle, and crushed it in his bare hand. Plastoid armor crumpled like parchment. as Kratos drove his fist through the trooper's chest plate, pulverizing the sternum beneath. The Leviathan axe materialized mid-swing, taking two more stormtroopers in a horizontal arc that split their armor and the bodies within. Frost spread instantly, freezing blood and flesh, turning soldiers into statues that toppled and shattered on the cantina floor. A thermal detonator rolled toward him, one trooper's desperate gambit. Kratos kicked it back with enough force to send it airborne. It detonated mid-flight, engulfing three stormtroopers in a sphere of flame and concussive force. The blast wave rocked the cantina, blowing out windows and igniting furniture. Seventh Sister ignited her lightsaber, dual spinning blades, connected by a rotating hilt, humming with deadly crimson energy. She launched herself forward with force-enhanced speed, spinning the weapon in a deadly figure eight, pattern designed to overwhelm through sheer velocity. The lightsaber blades met the Leviathan axe with a sound like reality screaming. Sparks erupted, not the clean plasma burn of lightsaber meeting metal, but something chaotic, violent, wrong. The URU metal infused with Itra magic did not simply resist the lightsaber. It rejected it, creating a feedback loop that sent both weapons recoiling. Frost crept along the lightsaber's blades, slowing their rotation. Seventh Sister's shock lasted only a moment, but a moment was all Kratos needed. He dismissed the axe and summoned the blades of chaos, the hellfire chains wrapping around his forearms as the weapons materialized. He swung both blades in a crossing pattern, flames trailing green and orange. She backflipped with acrobatic grace, narrowly avoiding the blades. But the chains extended, 15 feet, then 20, following her retreat with serpentine precision. One blade caught her shoulder, the hellfire searing through her robes and into flesh. She screamed, the pain unlike anything the Force had prepared her for. This wasn't plasma or kinetic damage. This was something older, something primal. Reinforcements. She shrieked into her comm link, rolling behind an overturned table. All units to the cantina. Deadly force authorized. Outside, sirens began to wail. Stormtroopers poured from garrison buildings, at least 30 converging on the location. Kratos heard them coming. Boots on stone, weapons charging, shouted commands. He glanced at the cantina's back exit, calculating trajectories and odds. He could kill these soldiers. All of them. He had the strength, the weapons, the will. But he had promised a truce. Promised his son that he would be better, that the monster could be more than rage and death. Kratos moved toward the back exit, but Seventh Sister raised her hand. Heavy cargo crates, each weighing hundreds of pounds, lifted into the air through her, forced manipulation and hurled themselves at him. He batted the first aside with his forearm, dodged the second. But the third caught him in the chest and slammed him against the stone wall. The impact would have liquefied a normal being's internal organs. For Kratos, it merely drove the air from his lungs. More stormtroopers poured through the entrance, firing in controlled bursts. Blaster bolts scorched his arms, his legs, his torso, dozens of impacts that burned flesh and sent pain signals his brain, cataloged and ignored. His regeneration worked to close the wounds. But it was slow, too slow in this reality. He was powerful, but he was not invincible here. Kratos reached up, grabbed a ceiling support beam, and pulled. The beam, solid durasteel designed to support tons of weight, tore free in his grip. He swung it like a club, crushing 4 stormtroopers and creating enough chaos to reach the back exit. He burst into the alley beyond and ran. Behind him, Seventh Sister rose, clutching her burned shoulder. Her face twisted with fury and something else, hunger. She had felt his power, tasted his strength. This was no Force user. This was something else entirely. Track him, she commanded. Deploy probe droids. I want him found within the hour. As she walked past the carnage, dead stormtroopers, shattered tables, scorch marks, and frozen blood, she activated her secure comlink. The hologram that appeared showed a figure cloaked in black, a breathing apparatus masking his face. Lord Vader, she said, kneeling. I have discovered something extraordinary. The Dune Sea swallowed Kratos like a secret. He ran for 3 hours straight, maintaining a pace that would have killed any normal being. Through heat exhaustion alone, the twin suns beat down mercilessly, and even his divine constitution felt the strain of this world's stellar radiation combined with dozens of blaster wounds slowly knitting themselves closed. His regeneration was functioning, but at perhaps 60% efficiency. Every wound closed, but it took minutes instead of seconds. He found refuge in a rocky canyon system, ancient stone carved by millennia of rare flash floods. The shadows provided relief from the suns, and a narrow crevice offered concealment. Kratos wedged himself into the space and finally allowed his body to rest, to heal, to adapt. The blaster burns itched as new skin grew over charred flesh. He examined one wound on his forearm. The plasma had penetrated, deeper than he'd expected, cauterizing as it went. Effective weapons. Primitive compared to Olympian lightning or Mjolnir's fury, but effective nonetheless. He had made an error. In every realm he'd walked, he had learned the rules before breaking them. Here, he had assumed his strength would be sufficient answer to any challenge. The woman with the red blade had proven otherwise, not through superior power, but through numbers, coordination, and weapons designed for a different kind of warfare. Sparta had taught him strategy. Ares had taught him rage. Athena had taught him wisdom. Atreus had taught him restraint. He would need all of it to survive this galaxy. A distant hum drew his attention. Kratos pressed deeper into the crevice as a spherical droid floated past the canyon. Mouth, another probe, scanning for his thermal signature. He had noticed 5 such droids in the past hour, crisscrossing search patterns with mechanical efficiency. The Empire was thorough. The probe passed without detecting him. The rock walls, superheated by the suns, created enough thermal interference to mask his signature. Small advantages. He had won wars on smaller margins. As darkness fell and the temperature plummeted, desert, extremes swinging from furnace to freezer, Kratos emerged from hiding. The stars above were wrong. Constellations he had never seen, but they were beautiful in their alienness. 2 moons rose over the dunes, casting silver light across the sand. He needed information, needed to understand this galaxy's power structures, its factions, its rules. The woman in dark robes commanded soldiers but deferred to someone higher. A chain of authority, which meant vulnerabilities, pressure points, ways to break their control, or ways to avoid them entirely. A campfire glowed in the distance, perhaps 3 miles across the cooling sand. Kratos approached with the stealth of a Spartan scout, moving between dunes, using the terrain. As he drew closer, he heard voices speaking in that same language the bartender had used. Basic, he would later learn it was called. For figures sat around the fire, smugglers by the look of them, dressed in mismatched armor and carrying an assortment of weapons. A light freighter was parked nearby, cargo ramped down. Interior lights creating pools of illumination in the darkness. They were loading or unloading something, working quickly despite the late hour. Heard about the thing in Mos Eisley, one was saying. A human male with a blaster rifle across his lap. They're saying it killed 20 stormtroopers with its bare hands. I heard 30, another replied. A weak way with facial tattoos and a vibroblade at his belt. And that it shrugged off blaster fire like it was nothing. Empires offering 10,000 credits for information. A third chimed in. A female Zabrak with horn implants and cold eyes. 20,000 if you can lead them to it. The fourth figure. A older human with a scarred face and the bearing of someone who'd seen too much. Spat into the fire. Not worth it, Kessa. Thing that can kill 30 troopers? That's not something you collect bounty on. That's something you run from. Kratos stepped into the firelight. All 4 scrambled for weapons, but froze when they saw him fully. The ash-white skin, the red tattoo. The scars that covered every inch of exposed flesh. The weapons that seemed too large for any being to wield. And the eyes, cold, ancient, containing depths of violence that made hardened smugglers' hands shake. Easy, the scarred human said slowly, keeping his hands visible. We don't want trouble, friend. Information, Kratos said in Greek, his voice carrying across the fire. When they stared blankly, he pointed to their ship, then to the sky, making a questioning gesture. The Zabrak, Kessa, found her courage first. You want off-world? You're the one they're hunting. She glanced at her companions. 20,000 credits is. The scarred human cut her off with a sharp gesture. Shut it, Kessa. Look at him. Really look. He addressed Kratos directly, speaking slowly and using gestures to supplement his words. You need passage? Off Tatooine. Kratos nodded once. Can you pay? The human rubbed his fingers together, the universal symbol for currency. Kratos had nothing. No credits. No salvage worth trading beyond the Tuscan charm he'd already spent. He could take the ship by force, but that would make him a pirate as well as a fugitive. More complications. The standoff lasted 10 seconds before the Weequay laughed bitterly. We're really considering this? Harboring an imperial fugitive. I'm considering staying alive, the scarred human replied. And I'm thinking that thing, he gestured at. Kratos is going to do what it wants regardless. So we can help and maybe earn some gratitude, or we can resist and definitely die. I know which odds I prefer. Before anyone could respond, light blazed across the dunes, 6, 7, 8 beams cutting through the darkness. Imperial searchlights from approaching assault transports. The whine of repulsor lift engines growing louder. They tracked him. The Weequay shouted, diving for the ship. We need to leave now. But it was too late. The first transport crested a nearby dune. Floodlights pinning the camp in brilliant illumination. The side hatches opened, and stormtroopers rappelled down in disciplined formation. 2 squads. 20 soldiers, with more transports approaching from other directions. And standing in the lead transport's open hatch, her burned shoulder wrapped in fresh bandages, was Seventh Sister. Surrender. Her amplified voice boomed across the sand. You are surrounded. Imperial forces authorized to use deadly force. The smugglers scattered, sprinting for their ship. The Zabrak, Kessa, turned back as she reached the ramp, whether to shout a warning or claim her bounty. Kratos would never know. A stormtrooper's blaster bolt caught her in the chest, and she fell without a sound. Kratos felt the familiar heat rising in his chest. Not anger at the woman's death, he had not known her, but anger at the waste, at the casual cruelty, at the system that allowed uniformed killers to murder anyone who ran. Just like the gods, just like Ares and Zeus and Odin and every divine tyrant who had ruled through fear. The Spartan rage began to build. Open fire. Seventh Sister commanded. 20 blaster rifles spoke as one, filling the night with crimson fury. The smuggler's ship exploded as a rocket slammed into its fuel cells, creating a fireball that lit the desert like a false dawn. The scarred human died trying to shield his eyes from the blast. The Weequay made it 5 steps before concentrated fire cut him down. Kratos walked through the blaster storm like a man walking through rain. The blades of chaos erupted into his hands, hellfire roaring to life along the chains. But this time, something was different. The flames burned brighter, hotter, fed by the rage building in his chest. The Spartan rage, the berserker, fury that had carried him through impossible battles, was rising, and the galaxy itself seemed to recoil from it. A stormtrooper's head separated from his shoulders before anyone registered. Kratos' movement. The blades whirled in patterns too fast to follow. Each strike dismembering, each sweep killing. The chains extended to their full 30-foot length, wrapping around soldiers and yanking them off their feet, crushing armor and the bodies within. Kratos caught a thermal detonator, mid-throw and hurled it back at the transport that launched it. The explosion flipped the vehicle, sending stormtroopers tumbling through the air in flames. He was among them before they landed, the Leviathan axe appearing in his grip, each swing cleaving through 2 or 3 soldiers at once. Seventh Sister leaped from her transport, lightsaber ignited and spinning. She launched a barrage of force attacks, telekinetic shoves, lightning from her fingertips, even attempting to choke him from 20 feet away. Kratos felt the invisible pressure on his throat, but pushed through it, his divine constitution resisting what would have killed a normal being. The force lightning struck his chest, and he roared, not in pain but in defiance, as his body absorbed and dispersed the energy. It hurt, burned like Zeus's lightning. But he had survived the god of Olympus's full fury. This was pale imitation. He threw the Leviathan axe. Seventh Sister dodged with force-enhanced reflexes, the weapon missing her head by inches. She spun, lightsaber raised in triumph. The axe recalled to Kratos' hand, and its return trajectory took Seventh Sister in the back. The URU metal punched through her spine with a sound like ice cracking. She gasped, blood bubbling from her lips, as frost spread from the wound, freezing her organs. She fell to her knees, lightsaber deactivating, eyes wide with disbelief. Impossible, she whispered. You're not. Force. Kratos stood over her, axe dripping red and white. I am what remains when gods die. He ended her quickly. She had earned that much through courage. The remaining stormtroopers broke and ran. Kratos let them go, watching as they scrambled into the remaining transports and fled into the night. Let them report. Let this empire know what they faced. Around him, the sand was soaked with blood and littered with bodies. The smuggler's ship burned, black smoke rising toward the stars. Kratos felt the rage subsiding, leaving only exhaustion and the familiar emptiness that always followed battle. He had tried to avoid this, tried to find another path, but the galaxy, like every realm before it, had chosen violence. And Kratos was very, very good at violence. In orbit above Tatooine, aboard the Star Destroyer Devastator, Darth Vader received the report. He watched the recording twice, footage from a surviving probe droid showing Kratos tear through an entire Imperial detachment like a natural disaster given form. Interesting, Vader said, his breathing apparatus the only sound in the silent bridge. Prepare my shuttle. I will handle this personally. The Dark Lord of the Sith had felt many things through the Force: fear, hatred, pain, power. But he had never felt absence before, never encountered a void that walked and killed and refused the Force's touch. He would remedy that ignorance, one way or another. The Devastator descended through Tatooine's atmosphere like a dagger pointed at the planet's heart. Kratos watched it come from his position in the rocky highlands north of the Dune Sea. The massive, wedge-shaped vessel blotted out stars as it passed, its underbelly bristling with weapons that could reduce cities to ash. He had seen warships before: Greek triremes, Norse longships, even the flying vessels of the gods themselves. But this was different. This was industry married to destruction, a statement of power written in durasteel and turbolaser batteries. And somewhere on that ship, someone had decided he was worth the Empire's personal attention. 3 days had passed since the massacre at the smugglers' camp. 3 days of moving through the wastes, avoiding probe droids and patrol speeders, surviving on the sparse desert fauna and what little water he could extract from moisture vaporators he passed. His wounds had fully healed now, his body finally adapting to this galaxy's stellar radiation. He felt stronger each day, closer to full capacity. The twin suns were setting when the shuttle descended, a Lambda-class craft painted in black, flanked by 4 TIE fighters in escort formation. They landed on a flat expanse of hardpan 2 miles from Kratos' position, close enough that the message was clear: we know where you are. Kratos could have run, should have run, perhaps, disappeared into the deep desert where even the Empire's technology would struggle to track him. But he was tired of running, tired of being hunted by powers that believed themselves untouchable. And something in him, the part that had challenged Ares, that had climbed Olympus itself, wanted to see what this galaxy considered its apex predator. He descended from the highlands as the last sun dipped below the horizon. The shuttle's ramp lowered with a hydraulic hiss, vapor spilling from the interior atmosphere controls. A single figure emerged, and even at distance, Kratos felt the weight of his presence. Not like the Force users he'd encountered. Those had pushed against his mind, tried to manipulate and control. This was different. This was pressure given form, a gravity well of darkness that bent reality around itself. Darth Vader stepped onto Tatooine's sand, his black armor gleaming in the dying light, his breathing apparatus creating a rhythmic sound that echoed across the empty plain. Behind him, 20 stormtroopers took positions at the shuttle's base, weapons ready but not raised. The TIE fighters circled overhead, searchlights tracking Kratos' approach. They met in the center of the hardpan, 50 feet of cooling sand between them. Vader spoke first, his voice artificially deep, mechanically enhanced. You have killed 47 Imperial personnel in 4 days. Destroyed 2 assault transports and a patrol speeder. Murdered an Imperial Inquisitor. He tilted his helmeted head slightly. The Empire does not tolerate insurrection. Kratos stopped walking. Your soldiers attacked first. I defended myself. You speak a language not in our records, Vader observed. You wield weapons our scanners cannot identify. You resist the Force itself. He took 1 step forward. What are you? A warrior, Kratos replied. Nothing more. Insufficient. Vader's hand rose, and Kratos felt it, the invisible pressure slamming into him like a tidal wave, attempting to crush his chest. collapse his lungs, shatter his bones. The same technique that had killed admirals and broken rebels. Kratos' feet slid backward 6 inches through the sand. His chest compressed, ribs creaking under impossible pressure. But they did not break. His divine physiology, even diminished in this reality, exceeded anything Vader had encountered. Kratos pushed back, not with the force. He had none, but with pure physical resistance. Muscles forged in Sparta and tempered by divine essence fighting against telekinetic power. The pressure lessened, then failed entirely. Vader's hand trembled slightly, the first sign of strain. Impressive, Vader said, and ignited his lightsaber. The crimson blade hummed to life, casting red shadows across black armor. Vader assumed a combat stance, Gemso, the Form V designed for overwhelming power, and advanced with mechanical precision. Kratos summoned the Leviathan axe. They met in the center with a clash that sent shockwaves rippling across the hardpan. Lightsaber met enchanted URU metal. And again that screaming. Feedback, plasma, and ancient magic, rejecting each other's fundamental nature. Frost spread along Vader's blade, steam rising where superheated plasma met ice. Vader pressed the attack, his strength augmented by cybernetics. And the dark side. He was faster than any opponent Kratos had faced in this galaxy. His strikes precise and devastating. The lightsaber carved through the air in patterns designed to overwhelm through mechanical repetition and crushing power. But Kratos had fought gods. He parried the first strike, dodged the second, caught the third on the axe's haft. Vader spun, bringing the lightsaber around in a horizontal sweep meant to bisect at the waist. Kratos recalled the axe and let it fly past him, then summoned it back. The weapon returned at a different angle, forcing Vader to abort his attack and deflect. They separated, circling. "You have skill," Vader acknowledged. "But skill alone will not save you from the power of the dark side." He thrust his hand forward, and force lightning erupted from his fingertips, not the weak sparks the Inquisitor had used, but a torrent of pure dark side energy that lit the desert like daylight. The electricity slammed into Kratos' chest, crawling across his skin, seeking nerve clusters and muscle tissue. Kratos roared, but he did not fall. The lightning burned, sent agony through every nerve ending. But his body, scarred by Olympian punishment, marked by divine curses, endured. He walked through the storm, each step an act of defiance. The blades of chaos manifesting in his hands. Vader's lightning intensified, pouring more power into the attack. Kratos' skin blackened and cracked, smoke rising from his flesh. But still he advanced. "What are you?" Vader's voice carried genuine confusion now, something he had not felt in years. "Your reckoning," Kratos growled, and swung both blades. Vader deactivated the lightning and brought his lightsaber up in defense. The blades struck from 2 angles simultaneously, their hellfire chains allowing attacks from impossible directions. Vader deflected one, but couldn't reach the second. It scored across his chest plate, the chaos flame eating into the durasteel, exposing circuits and life support systems beneath. Vader staggered backward, hand clutching his chest, where warning lights were flashing. Beneath the damaged armor, his breathing apparatus stuttered, fought to regulate, then stabilized. He looked down at the damage with something approaching disbelief. Nothing had pierced his armor since his duel with Obi-Wan. "You will die for that," Vader said, and his presence in the Force expanded like a black sun. The sand around them began to lift, pulled into the air by his rage. Rocks tore free from the earth. The very atmosphere seemed to compress under his fury. He unleashed it all. Boulders the size of land speeders flew at Kratos from every direction. The ground beneath his feet cracked and heaved, trying to throw him off balance. Vader's lightsaber became a blur as he pressed forward, each strike enhanced by telekinetic force, each parry followed by force pushes designed to create openings. Kratos met the assault with Spartan discipline and godkiller fury. He batted aside boulders with the Leviathan axe, its frost magic freezing and shattering stone. The blades of chaos whirled in defensive patterns, their chains intercepting attacks from angles a single weapon couldn't cover. When Vader used the Force to pull him off balance, Kratos simply planted the axe in the ground and used it as an anchor. They fought for 10 minutes that felt like hours, trading wounds that would have killed lesser beings. Vader's armor accumulated more damage, a score across the helmet, a puncture in the shoulder plating, frost damage spreading across his cybernetic limbs. Kratos bled from a dozen lightsaber cuts, his regeneration struggling to keep pace with the accumulated damage. But neither fell. Finally, they separated, both breathing hard, Vader's apparatus working overtime, Kratos' chest heaving with exertion. The stormtroopers at the shuttle hadn't moved, frozen by the sheer scale of the battle they were witnessing. The TIE fighters circled but did not engage, their pilots smart enough to know their weapons would be useless. "You cannot win," Vader said, his voice strained. "I am the Emperor's fist, the Dark Lord of the Sith. I have destroyed armies, toppled governments, extinguished the Jedi Order itself." Kratos straightened, blood running down his arms, eyes locked on the black-armored figure. "I killed the god of war, destroyed Olympus, brought Ragnarok itself. Your empire is nothing I have not already burned." "Then we are the same," Vader replied quietly. "Both destroyers, both monsters." "No." Kratos shook his head slowly. "I was a monster. I am trying to be more." "Then you will fail." Vader's stance shifted, preparing for a final assault. The galaxy does not allow for more, only power and those who wield it. Before either could move, a new sound cut through the desert night, the whine of approaching engines. Multiple sources, coming fast. Both warriors turned as starships appeared over the horizon. Freighters, starfighters, a mismatched fleet flying in loose formation. The lead ship, a battered Corellian corvette, transmitted on an open channel. The voice was human, male, carrying the accent of military training. "This is Captain Antilles of the Rebel Alliance. Imperial forces, power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded." "Rebels," Vader said, voice dripping with contempt. He looked back at Kratos. "It seems our contest must wait. Though I suspect they come for you, not me." The corvette's ventral guns swiveled, targeting the shuttle and TIE fighters. 3 X-Wings broke formation and screamed past at attack speed, warning shots scorching the sand near Vader's position. Vader's hand moved to his belt. Retrieving a small device, personal shield generator, Kratos realized. "We will meet again, God Killer. And when we do, one of us will not walk away." "I will be ready," Kratos replied. Vader activated the shield and force leapt back toward his shuttle. With impossible speed, the stormtroopers laid down covering fire as the TIE fighters engaged the X-Wings, filling the sky with green and red laser fire. The Lambda-class shuttle lifted off, shields flaring under Rebel weapons, and punched through the atmosphere toward the waiting Star Destroyer. The Corvette landed where Vader's shuttle had been, ramp already lowering. A dozen soldiers in mismatched armor poured out, weapons raised but not targeting Kratos. A woman emerged behind them, human, perhaps 30, with determined eyes and a blaster pistol holstered at her hip. "We've been tracking Imperial movements," she called over the wind from the ship's engines. "Saw what you did to their forces. Figured anyone causing that much trouble for the Empire might be interested in causing more." She stepped closer, studying him. "Name's Commander Vestra. Rebel Alliance, Outer Rim Operations. And you are?" Kratos looked at her, at the soldiers, at the ships hovering overhead. Another faction, another cause, another war that wanted to claim him. But he remembered the smugglers. Remembered Kessa falling, the scarred captain trying to shield his crew. Casual murder dressed in white armor. "Kratos," he said finally. "Well, Kratos." Vestra gestured to the Corvette. "We're offering transport off this rock. No strings, no obligations. Just a ride to somewhere the Empire won't find you in the next 5 minutes." She paused. "Or, if you're interested, we could use someone with your talents. The fight against tyranny always needs warriors." Kratos looked up at the stars, at the Star Destroyer retreating into orbit, at the galaxy that had dragged him from one war into another. He thought of Atrus, thought of the promise to be better, to build instead of destroy. But he also thought of the soldiers gunning down unarmed beings, thought of an empire that ruled through fear and considered murder a policy tool. Some battles, he realized, transcended personal redemption. Some evils demanded resistance. "I will hear your terms," Kratos said, and walked toward the Corvette. Vestra smiled grimly. "Welcome to the rebellion." The galaxy would speak of him in whispers after that night. The ghost of Tatooine, some called him. The God Killer, others said. Rebel propaganda turned him into a symbol, proof that even the Empire's greatest enforcer could bleed. Imperial records classified him as threat level Omega, a designation previously reserved for Jedi Masters. Kratos joined no faction fully. He worked with the rebellion when their goals aligned with his own sense of justice. But he remained independent, a force unto himself. He learned the galaxy's languages, its politics, its endless conflicts between light and dark. He discovered that the Force, for all its power, could not touch him, a fact that both fascinated and terrified those who understood its implications. Darth Vader hunted him across a dozen systems, their battles becoming the stuff of legend. Neither could claim victory, neither would yield. They were too similar, both warriors who had destroyed everything they loved, both seeking something they could never quite name. And in quiet moments, when Kratos stood alone beneath alien stars, he thought of Midgard, of his son, of the life he'd left behind when the dimensional rift tore him from one war and threw him into another. He had killed gods to protect his family. Now he fought an empire to honor their memory. The galaxy far, far away had gained something it had never seen before. A warrior who owed nothing to the Force, feared no Sith, and carried within him the death of pantheons. Whether he would be its salvation or its doom, only time would tell. But one thing was certain: the Empire, the rebellion, the Sith, and what remained of the Jedi, they would all learn the same lesson. The gods had learned. Kratos could not be controlled, could not be broken, could not be stopped. He was what remained when divine power met mortal rage and forged something eternal. He was the god of war, and this galaxy would remember his name.